Welcome to this week's Type 1 Thursday, and today's topic is... Boom! I asked you on my Instagram stories again what you wanted me to talk about, and vitamin D was the clear answer. Well, actually it was a yes or no question, so anyway, it was yes on that. So that's what we're talking about today. And vitamin D is claimed to help anything, and everything in your body, like your immune system, to Alzheimer's, to MS, to cancer and blood sugar. And there have been studies showing either way on all of these. So it's quite an important thing for our body. And did you actually know that vitamin D is something like a pro-hormone? So like a precursor of a hormone, and not as much of a vitamin as we are made to believe. It's so important in our body, and its role in many functions is astonishing. And our bodies can make it on our own, on its own, which I will go through in a little bit, but it basically uses cholesterol and sunlight. But we can also get it from food sources if the sunlight is not enough, which it can be, for example, in the northern hemisphere on sort of the winter half of the year. So, what are the benefits of vitamin D? Well, it can help regulate and control the body's ability to absorb phosphorus and actually calcium. It may also help the body regulate the insulin production in the pancreas. Vitamin D levels in a person should ideally be around 20 to 56 nanograms per liter. With anything clinically as low as 20 nanograms is considered deficient. But it is now, of course, known that we need a sufficient amount of vitamin D in our system, in our body, and something around the 60 to 80 mark, even 100, can help, for example, blood glucose levels to keep them under control, which is, of course, vital for people with diabetes. What else is it good for then? What is vitamin D good for? If you know, how about you send me a little comment so I know I'm not completely alone out there on the interwebs. But in the meantime, vitamin D does support our immune system, our brain, and our nervous system, which can be very good, and especially at this point of time. It also is very good for lung function and our cardiovascular system. And it can also influence sort of the gene expression of cancer tumors. So it's not quite clear how, it really works in there, but it seems to be able to have an influence on cancer metabolism. It also helps you have better skin. It helps you have healthier muscles. And actually more and more studies are finding a link between type 1 diabetes and vitamin D because of the autoimmunity as well. Because apparently, which is something I learned very recently, there is a presence of vitamin D receptors on the insulin secreting pancreatic beta cells. And to this, multiple studies have shown that vitamin D supplementation as a young child can seem to be able to prevent a type 1 diagnosis later in life. It's quite an interesting topic, actually, and if you're interested, I suggest that you Google it, because it is very it's a very interesting field of research, and of course I am invested myself, so please go find all the good stuff and report back. It can also help with depression in some cases as well. So how do we get vitamin D at all? And of course the one obvious one is, I tried to depict it in my clothing today, but sunshine. Sunshine is the one very natural and fantastic way of getting vitamin D. And this is because 80 to 90% of the body's vitamin D is actually made by the skin with the help of cholesterol and the UVB rays of the sun. This is when vitamin D3 gets transferred to the kidneys and the liver, and it's converted to calcitriol, which is the active form of vitamin D. And it's said, or it's recommended, that 20 to 30 minutes daily sun exposure is recommended. And this is, of course, more difficult when we are not in a summer time of the year here in the northern hemisphere. Basically, so sunscreen blocks if you have high enough sunscreen, it will block your vitamin D production in the skin, which is not a great thing if you are out in the sun trying to make vitamin D. And so this is actually why it's best to do short periods of time in the sun. Be very, very careful not to burn yourself, which is, key to all sun exposure. But make sure that you go without sunscreen so that you get the full benefits. Carefully, there are apps like, for example, my favorite summer app in the universe, which is the D-Minder app. I can't tag them, they're nowhere on social media. I do not work with them, but I think the app is fantastic because it takes into account your location, your altitude, all of these things to see what the UV score is for that day and that weather and everything, and then you can put in how much clothes you're wearing, how overcast it is, and it calculates, and your skin type, and it calculates how long you can safely be out in the sun to get vitamin D and sun exposure. It also gives you a great tan, if that's what you're looking for. If being in the sun is not an option, what are your options? Well, you have two other ways of getting vitamin D. One are food sources, and this is, of course, I always recommend whole food sources. So I'm not really, personally, this is just me, but personally I'm not really sure about the fortified sort of foods that are out there. And in my opinion, the best forms of exogenous vitamin D is D3, and it comes from animal foods. Unfortunately, that's where it's, well, not unfortunately, but that's where it's most widely available. And most grains and other non-animal foods, they really need to be fortified with this extra vitamin D. And I feel like that's a little too much chemistry for me. So I'll leave that alone. That's up to each and every one of you to decide. But I would recommend things like cod liver oil. Salmon is a great vitamin D source, and so is salmon roe, and it's delicious. How about some tuna or sardines? Eggs are great, cheese, and liver. I'm having liver pate tonight, and I cannot wait. Also because of the vitamin D, but mainly just because it's yummy. You can also, of course, if you can't get any sun and you can't eat any of these things, you can supplement vitamin D. You are not left alone at all. And make sure that you do get the vitamin D3 and not the D2, because the D2 is not as bioavailable, so it doesn't get absorbed as well in the body, and D3 is already one step closer to being used, so make sure it's D3. Make sure you take these supplements with a fatty meal for the best absorption, because otherwise what's the point of eating them if they don't get absorbed, right? And also, I mean, how much does one supplement? That is an everlasting question, and I cannot even tell you how many people have asked me this, but the fastest and easiest and safest way to check is actually with a blood test, so that you can see where your level is now, and then you can try supplementing for a while, take a new blood test and see if you need to increase or decrease. And that's the safest way. But generally, living in the northern hemisphere, it's difficult to get enough during the winter, and especially if you also have some sort of autoimmune thing going on, like I do, and many of us do here. Remember that the official recommendations, as in what you see on the supplement package, is usually it tends to err on the low side. So having an excess of vitamin D is very difficult to achieve. You have to take many supplements for very long to get excess, which would manifest in too little calcium in your body. Did you know that vitamin D is this important And if you did, tell me how you make sure that you get enough vitamin D. And if you didn't, how are you planning to get enough vitamin D into your system? Thank you for watching. Until next time on Type 1 Thursday.